Good morning, everybody. Macroeconomics, and we are just in the part building up a general macroeconomic model in order to explain the development of an economy. And today we will implement the money market, and therefore I will also recommend to attend next week on Tuesday the talk of Dirk Gerland, member of the Bundesbank, and he will in general talk about the money market and the dependencies between money interest and prices, and especially, of course, he will talk about developments in the Eurozone and, of course, with a view on the look of monetary policy within the Eurozone. Okay, we started with the so-called Keynesian cross, where we described a demand-driven economy given I think I have a better picture, this one here, yeah, given the demand, or the overall demand in the economy with the parts total consumption, total investment, and total government expenditure. And we assumed that just due to this demand, the production will just follow our demand plans, and this is represented then by these 45-degree lines, which represents all points where production meets demand. And within this model, we talked about the impact which would happen if we just increase government expenditure. In the diagram, this just shifts up the total demand curve. So we obtain here a new general equilibrium, and then we talked about the amount of the impact and derived the so-called fiscal multiplier, which is given by 1/1 minus the propensity to consume, the marginal consumption rate. And then we talked about the shortfalls of our model, that especially we didn't have incorporated the money market, and this we will do then in the so-called ISLM model, which, and this is really important that you keep this in mind, which still means that we take commodity prices as fixed, but now we are introducing the interest rate as a general variable within our model, and this interest rate is then connecting us the money market and the commodity market. And IS, the name came from that the equilibrium condition, investment equals savings. This we had also when we have looked at the circular flow at the financial institutions sector, is the same as the equilibrium condition in the Keynesian commodity market model, and therefore the name IS. And from this investment equals savings equilibrium condition, we have then derived a dependence from the commodity market between total output, total income, and interest rates, because we made these investments dependent on interest rates, and there we argued that the dependence of investment on interest rates is negative. And this was then the last part of the last week, where we just started from the same picture we had derived for the commodity market, which you have just seen a minute ago. But now this part of the vertical axis where the total demand curve is starting is now depending on interest rates. And when we start with the total demand curve depending on just any interest rate, let's say 4%, then we can calculate the amount of investment for the level of 4%, and then I of 4%, government expenditure, and the autonomous consumption is this vertical axis part where the demand curve starts. And therefore, we can then derive a total income, which is now also depending on this interest rate I1, for example, 4%. So this total income is depending on a specific interest rate, and therefore we have then drawn in a new diagram with interest rates and income just this point. So if this is 4%, then this 4% and total income depending on 4% is just one equilibrium point from the commodity market. And the next step is now that we ask ourselves what would happen if we have an other interest rate level in our economy. And here we assumed that interest rates are increasing. So now let's assume we have 6%, not 4%. So interest rates are increasing from I1 to I2. And this means now, because investment is negatively depending on interest rates, that if I increases, or interest rates, small I is increasing, then capital I investment is decreasing. So, and this I have drawn in red, meant that this vertical axis part is also decreasing due to the fact that now the investment part of the total vertical part, autonomous consumption, investment, and government expenditure is now decreasing. This means total demand curve is parallelly shifting downward. And this means now the total equilibrium income from the commodity market equilibrium has decreased with respect to the former total income Y star of I1. So we obtain then a new pair of income and interest rates with a lower income and a higher interest rate. This is then, so to speak, our second possible pair of interest rates and income derived from the commodity market. And having explained this, we then make the thought experiment, well, I have to do this for all possible interest rates. So just from 0 to infinity. And then we always would obtain the property that if we are increasing interest rates, that then equilibrium income is decreasing. So overall, we obtain then a function representing this dependence on interest rates and income from the commodity market, which is falling in interest rates. So we obtain a decreasing function representing all possible interest rate income combinations from the commodity market. Yeah, and now we are doing more or less the same for our money market. And at the money market, we just take that money supply given just as a number by the central bank. So we assume now that the central bank can directly steer the nominal money amount, capital M. And at this point, we are already introducing prices. So we are dividing nominal quantity of money by the price level, although, please keep this in mind, still we assume that price level is fixed and that we can set the price level to 1. So we could at this part still leave out the price level, but I want to already introduce the price level because this will be then afterwards the point when we start to relax our assumption of fixed prices. Because of course, in reality, we need a model where the price level can change. Because of course, prices are changing. But still, at this point, also P is a fixed number and therefore real money, small m, is also just given by the central bank. And then go back in, I think, 2 weeks in the lecture. There we have already introduced the money demand from transaction motive, precautionary motive, and the speculative motive, that we have argued that money demand is positively depending on income and negatively depending on interest rates. Okay, so what does this now mean? Now at first we start with a diagram on the vertical axis, interest rate, and on the horizontal axis, money demand and money supply. So, first question. In this diagram, how can we draw money supply? Capital M is a fixed number just set by the central bank, and P is also a fixed number. So we could assume M over P is maybe, as we had it, I think M3 was roughly 16 billion euros. And also, so especially M is an exogenous variable. So if M over P is 16 billion euros, so the number 16 billion, how can I draw this function in the left diagram? Maybe also the internet can participate. There we are. F of x is 3. How do you draw this function? Yep. Yes, this is a horizontal line, and now this is what we quite always do, unfortunately, in economics. You know also the commodity market diagram, price, quantity, and the, so to speak, funny thing is, of course, we quite often write x of p, that demand is depending on prices. And this means that we, unfortunately, in economics, we are exchanging the x's with respect what we have learned in school. Because in school, f of x is on the vertical axis, and here x of p is on the horizontal axis. So in our case, here we are doing the same. On the horizontal axis, we have the function, and on the vertical axis, we have the argument. So if this is here from school, a horizontal line, what do I have to draw then in the left upper left diagram if we exchange just the axis? Yep. Yeah, it is just a vertical line. So this would be money supply, M over P. And yeah, so, and now we take money demand. And now we are doing something similar as we have done in the commodity market. There we have drawn a demand function given one variable, given the interest rate. And now we have money demand depending on income and interest rate. In the diagram, we want to draw the dependence on interest rate. So we have then to draw the money demand function given an income level. So then draw in yi diagram LD of then y1 depending on I, a given income level. So now we just fix this dependent by just any number. Let's say GDP in Germany 4 billion euros. So this is now fixed, and we are left with a negative dependence on interest rate. So this means we can just draw a falling function in our I money demand diagram. Okay? Due to this assumed negative dependence on interest rate. This means that depending on interest rate, we have a monotonically decreasing function. So this would be then just one possible money demand function depending on a fixed income Y1 and our interest rate. And of course, as we have it always here, Y is YD, I equals S. The cut of our two functions is the equilibrium of the market. So we obtain then at this interest rate level the possible money market equilibrium with interest rate I1. Oops, sorry, I need a little bit more space. I1, which is now depending on our chosen income level. So again, in the commodity market, we derived Y depending on interest rates. Now we are deriving I depending on income. Just, so to speak, the opposite. So this is depending on Y1. And now we are just drawing on the right-hand side of this diagram another diagram now with interest rate and income. And then we put this equilibrium interest rate level, let's say also let's take a star here because it's an equilibrium interest rate, I1 of Y1, and then on the horizontal axis, if we assume it's 4 billion euros of Germany, let's say it's just around here, Y1. So this point is now one possible pair derived from the money market equilibrium, one pair of interest rates and income. And now we make the thought experiment. What happens to the money demand curve if we are assuming that income has increased? Now, Y2, assume Y2 larger than Y1. What happens then to our money demand function? Well, for this, we then need this assumption here. Money demand is increasing in income. What does this mean for our function now? Let's say we take just any point on our first curve. Let's say this one here. This is just one amount of money demand given Y1 and the corresponding interest rate, I don't know, 2%. Now, think of, still we have here 2% interest rate, but a larger income. Is then our money demand higher or lower? Positive dependence on income. So this interest rate we hold fixed 2%. Given an income of 1,000 euros is then, this is then the level of money demand. And what happens now to this point if we increase income. Yep. Yes. And this just means we have to move this point to the right. Let's say it would be somewhere here. Well, of course, and then this thought experiment you have to do for every point on this curve. And for every point on this curve, we have the same argumentation. Money demand is increasing, so we obtain a rightward shift of the total function. This would be then money demand depending on a general higher income level and interest rate. So then LD is shifting to the right. Okay, and now then we can look at our new money market equilibrium. We see that equilibrium interest rate has increased. I star 2 of Y2. This we put again to our other diagram. I2 star of Y2. And now we take, well, income has also increased. The corresponding income level is larger than Y1. Somewhere here. So this would be then our second possible combination of interest rate and income derived from the money market equilibrium. And then the last step is that we have to analyze this situation for not only for Y1 and Y2, but for all possible income levels. And then we always would obtain pairs if we are increasing income, pairs where we have increased income means also increased interest rates. So we obtain then from the money market a general increasing function for interest rates and income. LM curve. And these are then all possible interest rate income combinations for money market equilibria. And here, keep in mind that this LM curve is then an increasing function in Y. Yeah, surprise, surprise, we take these two functions together simultaneously in an IY diagram, and then the cut of these two functions is our overall equilibrium in our economy. The LM curve is the locus of all possible money market equilibria. The IS curve is the locus of all possible commodity market equilibria. And so the cut of these two functions is the locus of the simultaneous equilibrium at money market and commodity market, which I have written down here. Okay, and then we want just to calculate a little example here, given the consumption function, interest rate, investment function, government expenditure, total demand. Here I do not need R, but I. And this we will do together. So I just take this, or let's take this in here. We shall determine IS and LM curve, and afterwards calculating the overall equilibrium. So what do we have to do? IS curve. IS curve means we are starting with the equilibrium condition from the commodity market. So what we need is total demand. What is total demand giving these three functions here? It is always the same as we had it also already in the pure Keynesian commodity market model. Total demand is consumption plus investment plus government expenditure. C plus I plus G. So this is then 50 plus 0.8 Y plus 30 minus 300 times I plus 20. This we can write a little bit easier, of course. This is 100, okay? 100 plus 0.8 Y minus 300 I. Then equilibrium condition at the commodity market. Supply is following demand, Y equals YD. So we have Y equals 100 plus 0.8 minus 300 I. So, and this we solve just for Y. So putting all parts of this equation with Y on the one hand side, on the left hand side, means minus 0.8 Y. So we obtain Y minus 0.8 Y equals 100 minus 300 I. Okay? So this is of course 0.2 Y, 100, 300 I, and we are dividing by 0.2. This means multiplying by 5. So Y equals 500 minus 1500 I. This is just our IS equation. Let's put here also a little diagram. I and Y. This represents, of course, just a linear line. If we set I to 0, then we are left with the 500 here. So I0 is here, and let's assume we have a 500 at this point. Well, then we can make the same question with y, setting y to 0 means 1500. I equals 500, so I is 1/3, okay? If we set here for I 1/3, this means 1500 divided by 3 is 500. 500 minus 500 is 0. So the vertical cut is then 30.3%, which is just 1/3. So this is our IS curve. So now LM. LM means we need LD. Here we have 0.5 y minus 250i. And of course, we need money supply. Money supply is m over p, 400 divided by 2. What is then the next step? The condition for the money market equilibrium. And this is? Can anybody help me? Money market equilibrium condition is? So we need the corresponding condition to this equation. This is supply. This is demand. Yep. No. LM equals IS is a little bit too fast. This is then the step when we have the LM function. Now we want, at the first step, we want to derive the LM function. And this is supply. Equilibrium condition is demand equals supply. So LD equals M over P. This is commodity market equilibrium condition, and this is money market equilibrium condition. Well, we have both functions are given, so 0.5y minus 250i equals 200. And again, putting all y parts on the left-hand side and all I parts on the right-hand side. So plus 250i, 0.5i equals 200 plus 250i. Dividing by 0.5 means multiplying by 2. Y equals 400 plus 500i. Then this is our LM equation. Before we calculate the overall equilibrium, setting LM and IS equal, let's draw the LM function. Setting I to 0 means we are left with the 400. Y is then 400. This is maybe somewhere here. So from this point, we are just starting and we increase with the 500 here. But again, we have to be a little bit careful. This is the slope of the IS function, 1500. This is the slope of the LM function, 500. So the slope here is smaller. And then at the first step, we could think, so smaller means a flatter curve. But again, here we have solved for y, and y is on the horizontal line. So we have again exchanged the axis. So the LM curve in this diagram is a steeper function, because again, we just have to exchange the axis. So LM would maybe look like then like this. And this would be then our graphically derived overall equilibrium in our example. And of course, your colleague already have mentioned this in the chat. The overall equilibrium we obtain when we are set LM equals IS. So we just take this function here, 500 minus 1500i equals 400 plus 500i. Then plus 1500i minus 400. We are left with 100 equals 2000i. Dividing by 2000 is 100 over 2000 is I star. 1 over 20 is 5 over 100, so 5%. So this would be then 5%. How do we obtain overall equilibrium income? What can we do? We also want to have this number here. How do we obtain it? Oops. Insert in a function. Yep, great. So in the IS or LM function, we do both because this is somehow to control ourselves if we have made the right calculation. So 500 minus 1500 times 5 over 100 hopefully is equal to 400 plus 500 times 5 over 100. So from the left-hand side, we obtain 425, and 5 times 15 is 75. 500 minus 75. Pooh, we are lucky. This is also 425. Okay. And now, since we want to go to Berlin and to influence the new government in February, we want to make economic policy. So now, as we have done in the Keynesian commodity market model, we also want to analyze the impact, what is happening to our economy if we are increasing government expenditure. So for this, we start in our model what happens if we are doing fiscal policy. This again means increasing total government expenditure by some number delta G. We are starting with our equilibrium, overall equilibrium condition. We had derived a general I as function from our commodity market equilibrium. So now we have already our IS equation, and since all possible commodity market equilibria, depending when we have derived the IS equation on the same level of government expenditure, we obtain, of course, also an IS function which is depending, of course, on this level of government expenditure. And now what we have done, let's say government expenditure 400 billion euros, billion euros, and now we are increasing government expenditure by 10% to 440 billion euros. And then we have to make the same analysis as we have done before, now for a new government expenditure level. So what happens to our total demand function if we are now increasing government expenditure? So what we want to do is how looks like YD of now G plus delta G. What happens in the upper diagram? Here we have this vertical axis cut. Now not changing interest rates, but changing government expenditure. It is the same, just a larger number for the vertical axis part. So this would be YD of G plus, the parallel shift. In the chat we have it. Parallel upward shift. And now we had given this YD function, the total demand function. What happens then to our total equilibrium? Not total, but to our commodity market equilibrium. This also increases. So now, with a higher level of government expenditure, the corresponding income level to the interest rate level I1 is now larger, is this one. So we obtain here a new point. And again, now, taking now the new government expenditure level as given, we again make the same analysis to derive the new IS function. Now we are thinking about the case, what happens given now the new level of government expenditure if interest rates are changing in our economy. So this means we make the same analysis for every point on the former IS curve. This one has shifted to the right, so every point on the IS curve have to shift to the right. So we obtain an overall rightward shift of our IS curve. So this is then IS of G plus delta G. So increasing G by delta G means a right shift of the IS curve. So, having derived this general rightward shift of the IS curve, then we go to our overall equilibrium with the money market equilibria represented by the LM curve. And now we think of an increasing government expenditure. G2 should be larger than G1. From the former slide, we have derived that this means higher level of government expenditure, rightward shift of IS curve. So IS of G1 shift to the right means now for the new overall equilibrium, because nothing happens to the LM curve. There, no parameter has changed. We obtain Y star of G2, increased total income and increased interest rate. Increasing income and increasing interest rates. Or if we want to argue stepwise, we can more or less say, well, if G goes up, this means, so to speak, as a first impact, total demand is increasing. From commodity market, YD equals Y means Y is increasing. Now this has an impact on our money market. Increasing Y means money market demand will increase. If money demand, not money market, money demand will increase. So we, so to speak, move along the LM curve, that this increases interest rates, moving along the LM curve. And this has again an impact on our commodity market, because we have a negative dependence on investment. We have now a higher interest rate level. This means investment is going down. So in the end, the positive effect of increasing government expenditure on overall income Y is less than the impact in the pure commodity market model, since the increased interest rates are decreasing investment. So this means the government is taking money, giving it into the system, but this has the effect that interest rates are increasing, so we are privately investing less. And this is therefore then also called the so-called crowding out effect. So government is doing something, and the impact is that the private households are doing less. So government expenditure is crowding out private investment. And here we see also just the part where the different views on the economy have the point. So the Keynesians, they say, well, we know this crowding out effect, but this crowding out effect is not that large. We end up with an overall positive push on total income. And so to speak, the neoclassical economists have the view, they take also the effect, and they say this effect is more or less 100%. So if the government is taking 50 billion euros, then just in the market, investment is going down by 50 billion euros. So more or less no positive effect of total income. And this is always the discrepancy the different views argues in the, so to speak, same logical argumentation, but in this argumentation, then the one side says, well, I know this effect, but the effect is small, and the other ones say, this effect is large. So here we can then also draw, this would be the overall effect of delta G on Y without money market and this one here, this is the effect of delta G on Y with money market, and then we could say, let's take here, this would be then the crowding out part. Okay, 50 minutes left. So what we now also want to do, since we have introduced the money market, we can now also the impact of monetary policy. So again, we start with an already derived LM curve given just any money supply level. And now what happens to an LM curve if money supply is increased by delta M? So let's again assume we starting, oops, I think this has to be, yeah, so with an money demand function. Remember, when we have derived the LM curve, we have set the income level to some number. So one point here is I0 and Y0. Now we are not changing Y, but we are changing M. So this is LM of M, and now first step, what happens? Let's take this LD to LD if M is increasing. Oh, sorry, not LD. Where do we find M? What happens to supply if M is increasing? So in our diagram, M over P. Yes, thank you very much. In the chat we have it. Then M over P is also increasing, and therefore we obtain a rightward shift of money supply M plus delta M over P. So then, still given our income level Y 0 means now the corresponding interest rate level to y0 is now not this I0, but this new cut here. Let's say this is I0 prime of now m plus delta m. So the corresponding interest rate level has decreased. With this, we go also to our right diagram, I0 prime of m plus delta m. So this point here now moves downward. And now we have to make this analysis for every point from our starting LM curve. So the same argumentation holds for every possible money market equilibrium. So every point is shifting downward. So we obtain an overall downward shift of the LM curve. This means we obtain a downward shift of the LM curve. Yep. Here. Oh, yeah, sorry. Thank you. So, with this, we go also, oops, still saving, to our overall equilibrium. Now, M is increasing with a higher level of money supply. We obtain a downward shift of the LM curve, LM of M2, since M2 is larger than M1. And this means we obtain a new overall equilibrium I star of M2 and Y star of M2. And also, we can then argue, starting from the money market, if M is increasing, this means I is decreasing. And if I is decreasing, we go again from the money market to our commodity market. And this means I of I is increasing. This is a part of total demand. So total demand is going upward, and then overall commodity market equilibrium also Y is increasing. So then increasing money supply increases overall total income. Well, this is just a very nice result, so to speak. If we just start to print money, then we have a positive impact on our economy. Well, and here then we of course see some shortfall of this model because reality is not that easy. And there we see actually here what also can happen if we are giving just money into the system, well, that especially the suppliers start to increase prices. So in the next step, then especially we relax this assumption that this price level is a fixed number. Okay, but we have 5 minutes left, I think. Then we can also go to our example. And here you see I took the same functions as we have had it in the other example. And therefore, I'm doing now something special if when we want to make these calculations, because what is now our task? If these two here, oops, no, so let's start with green. Up. Because I'm a lazy guy. If I have done already all calculations, I do not want to do the same calculations again. Because this is already my overall equilibrium. The only thing I do now is doubling government expenditure. So we have only now G equals 40. And then let's see where do I have this 40 now. This means here the 20 becomes a 40. If this is a 40, here I have 120. So here I have 120. And then 5, this is 120. And 5 times 120 is 600. Oh, I have always written it in the upper part. Therefore, let's do it here also at the upper part. 600. Well, the slope is the same, 1500, so I obtain here my new IS curve. So LM is the same. There I do not have to change anything. So I go to this part here. IS means here I have a 600. Then 600 minus 400 is 200. And 200 divided by 2000 is then 10%. Then I insert this in the new IS equation or the old LM equation, because LM nothing has changed. So 600 1,500 times 10 over 100. And here I have 400 plus 500 times 10 over 100. And I'm also lucky because this is 600 minus 150 is 450, and 400 plus 50 is of course also 450. So I'm ending up here with 450, and I star prime with 10%. So then it's better. Oh, do you give me 4 minutes? Because then we can also do the money market. Where is it? My calculation here. So and now the money market. Oops. No. There. And then let's take this picture here. And this we will do in red. The quantity amount of money should increase by 25%. So M or delta M is 100. 25% times our 400. Okay? So then we have the new money amount of 500, and so M over P equals 250. So now the IS equation is the same as the former one. We go into the LM equation, and there we obtain here our 500 and here 250. So this is 250. Then here we have 250, and here we have now 500. 2 times 250. So this means our LM curve is just starting at 500. So this is LM of M equals 500. Well, the nice thing here is that we already see the result, zero interest rates. But see if we find this also when we are going through our calculation. So here we have the 500, and of course 500 minus 500 is just 0. So here we obtain 0, and then equilibrium interest rates are 0%. This we insert into our IS equation. So 500 minus 1,500 times 0% is of course 500, and here we have 500 plus 0% is of course also 500. And then we are done. And next week, then we will relax the assumption of fixed prices. Thank you very much for today.